Hello and welcome to the VandySports Postgame Show. Ole Miss dominates Vanderbilt 33-7 alongside Joey Dwyer. I'm Billy Derrick, back at you. We were just at Hawkins Field, and we have made our way over to Lipscomb, where Joey calls his home. So luckily he's welcomed me into to his academy, beautiful campus. But Joey, we won't be too long here. I can't say we're stunned. I think, I don't think we really expected Vanderbilt to come out and beat Ole Miss. Vanderbilt didn't cover, right? The spread was 25.5, I think, right before the game. I think I checked, and Vanderbilt lost by, 26, I guess, 33-7. So, overall disappointing. You're at the point where, and Clark Lee even said it this week, Joey, you're at the point in the season where you are saying the same things. I mean, we've said the same things since, I don't know if I'd go as far as Hawaii, but I mean, we really are. I mean, they beat Hawaii. They, were able to beat Alabama A&M. But I think the big first warning sign, for me at least, was the Wake Forest game, right? We made the trip up there, and I think we expected Vanderbilt to compete and have a chance to win. They didn't. I mean, they did not play well, and Wake Forest took Vanderbilt's mistakes and ran with them. And then UNLV, same thing. I mean, Vanderbilt made mistakes. UNLV just kind of sat back and beat Vanderbilt. But tonight, Joey, same story, different week. I thought it was interesting. Walter Taylor got in there, and I thought, ran the ball well. He led a 10-play, 65-yard drive where he capped it off with a 2-yard touchdown run. On that drive, he had a beautiful pass to Junior Sherrill down the sideline and quite frankly, Joe, we haven't been able to watch a ton of this game. We were able to watch a lot of the second half. So, we've been trying to,
we were watching it on camera in the first half too.
Right. So, we saw bits and pieces of that first half, but again, there just wasn't enough for Vanderbilt tonight. They did not feel prepared. I was going to write 3 quick takes. I just kind of scratched it. I said, I'll get all my takes out in the post game. I think Chris is going to have his quick thoughts, and you'll have a few stories out here for fans. But again, there's really not much else to be said, Joey.
Yeah, the first drive told me all I needed to know. Ole Miss went down the field. 99 seconds it took them to score a touchdown. Vanderbilt got punched in the face. It didn't respond. It responded by turning it over. This game was over really quickly, Billy. I mean, we didn't even have to watch the second half to know how this was going to play out. Obviously, when we needed to for Walter Taylor and such, but man, Billy, it looked like they had no chance. And coming out of a bye week after the Georgia game, it should never, ever look like that coming out of a bye week, and it did. And I don't know how you win against Auburn with a performance like that. I have no reason to believe that they'll have a performance good enough to, I guess, compete with Auburn even. After watching that, looked completely uninspired. I'm inspired to watch basketball. I'm inspired to watch baseball after that. I was inspired to watch the Tennessee versus Kentucky game. They looked outmanned. I wrote a story about this after the game. At some point, it's not about being unprepared and failing to execute in the margins and failing to do the little things well. At some point, there's a team on the field that has all these NFL players. There's a team that doesn't. There's a team that doesn't execute well enough, I guess, in the margins and such. But that's also a team that's not good enough at times. And a lot of the time, they don't play well enough in the secondary. Their offensive line isn't good enough. They have a revolving door at quarterback right now. And the communication in terms of their messaging with what they're going to do at quarterback has been really poor to me. It doesn't seem like there's a plan. It feels like, oh, we'll start Ken, see what Ken does. Oh, Walter, I guess we'll play him. Doesn't seem to be much messaging. There doesn't seem to be much of a plan, and not a good football team right now, Billy, and hasn't been for a couple weeks. That's reflected in 7 straight losses. That's blunt, but I don't know how else you put it. Injuries, I guess, hurt them. CJ Taylor didn't play, but there's only so much you can say on their behalf, Billy. There's only so much that you can say to get people in a positive light. They lost, and I didn't expect anything different.
Yeah, there's no sugarcoating it. Joey off the top rope right there. No, in all seriousness, again, we won't try to be too long. And if you guys have questions and comments, we will get to them. Joey's got pieces coming out. I think Chris should have a piece up on the site. Of course, the board has been It's been pleasant tonight, per usual. But yeah, but no, the Wash House is one of our sponsors tonight. I'll kind of spread out the sponsors. The Wash House, one of our favorites, and they're one of our favorites because they're the presenting sponsor for basketball season, and that is coming up in about 9 days, November the 7th. I think Vanderbilt fans are looking forward to basketball season, and all of a sudden, because of football, there's a lot of pressure on Jerry Stackhouse and this basketball team now. So if you're dreading laundry day and if it's stealing the time to do the things that you truly enjoy, let them at the Wash House take care of that for you. They are laundry professionals. They've got 2 convenient locations in the greater Nashville area. Just drop off your dirty laundry, and their professional attendants can give you back the one thing you can never have enough of, your time. Visit their website. That's washhouseclean.com. All right. Again, not too much to get to here, Joey. We do have a question here from Matthew Moser. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, but why would you say that they looked unprepared rather than just a bad football team? Well, both things can be true. I mean, I think it was pretty obvious they were unprepared. They were coming off a bye week. You have 2 weeks to prepare, and yeah, credit Ole Miss. I mean, yeah, but they don't have the pieces right now for their offense. But I say they're unprepared because that's how it looked. I mean, both things. Just because I say they looked unprepared doesn't mean they're not a bad football team. This is a 2-7 football team, right? But I think you have to look at it realistically, and we've heard some rumblings from fans about Joey Lynch and the defensive coordinator and a lot of these coaching jobs, and a few weeks ago it was on the coaches, but now we've resorted to this team doesn't have enough talent. So what is it? I mean, at this point, Joey, you're 2-7, and there's excuses flying around. There's all kinds of different theories flying around. I put a tweet out today that Walter Taylor, they might have found something there. I mean, with this offensive line, Joey, and we talked about it during the game, there's just not much you can do through the air consistently, right? I mean, when A.J. Swan was in there, yeah, he would show flashes, but there was nothing consistent in the passing game. And Ken Seals today, same thing, right? But you put Walter Taylor in there, it's like Mike Wright last year. You put a running quarterback in Walter Taylor out there, and all of a sudden it looks a little bit different, right? So I just think this offense right now, you need a spark, and the silver lining here is that, yeah, can they beat Auburn? Who knows? Maybe, right? I mean, that's probably their only shot. South Carolina is also a bad football team. But right now, that's grasping at straws. I mean, I don't – it's just been an awful year, right? And tonight just is another bowling ball, to drop. There's 12 games. They've won 2, but it feels like they're on the path of not winning another. And again, they might, but and again, to answer that, go back and answer that question. I said they're unprepared. Again, Joey, that doesn't mean I don't think they're a bad football team. It's pretty obvious to say they're a bad football team, right? But I think they also were unprepared. You had 2 weeks to prepare for this game, and it looked like there was nothing out there for Ole Miss. So,
yeah, you mentioned Walter Taylor. That's something I want to talk about as well. Walter Taylor, I think, added a nice element in the run game. Obviously, I mean, they had a spark with him when he went in the game. Their offense looked completely different with him in the game versus Seals. We got to get to the bottom of what exactly happened. I think Seals was benched, though, from the looks of it. I don't want to run with that. But Seals, he went back in the game.
He went back in the game, and then he went back to the bench, and he looked obviously frustrated.
Yeah, so I don't know exactly what happened there. I'm sure Aria will tweet something from the presser because she's there. But, I mean, we'll see, Billy. What I'm concerned about with Taylor, and I think you're kind of looking long-term with this, is like Mike Wright, I think, was a better thrower than Taylor is at this stage. It's not to say Taylor's not a talented thrower.
Agree, yeah.
Certainly a talented thrower. Decision-making wasn't awesome tonight. Threw the interception. It's kind of a force, but I guess it was 3rd and 18 anyway. What if you load up the box against Walter Taylor and make him throw to beat you? I don't know if he's capable of that at this point in his career. He's young. He still has some things to iron out. I don't really know how they move forward here. I think he could certainly give you a spark, but everything that you're saying positively about this team and everything I say positively about this team even feels like I'm grasping at straws and thinking, maybe this works. AJ Newberry was good tonight, but
Yeah.
I mean, would he have been great if they were playing against some of the other teams they played against and he only had 30 yards and that's a positive? So I don't know what to say, Billy. I mean, just a really poor outing, and we're saying the same things every week. I'm glad Clark acknowledged it, but
Yeah,
it's tough.
I mean, look, the staff knows exactly what's going on. These players know exactly what's going on, right? And we've talked about the same stuff the past 4 or 5 weeks, right? So you've got to find a different twist to talk about. We're not just going to come on here and berate this team. We know what's wrong with this team. We know what's wrong with this program. But at the same time, they are where they're at, right? You are what you are. You're a 10-7. 10-7.
Oh, no.
You're a 2-7. It's late. Full work day. 2-7 football team, right? You are what your record says you are. Bill Parcells, the old legendary quote. And they're not stupid, right? Clark Lee, I mean, he said it this week. He said, well, it has gotten repetitive in this room, in this press room. He knows it. He's, there's things from Clark now that you're starting to almost get a fan sense, because he did grow up a Vanderbilt fan. I mean, he gets it, right? He knows everybody's frustrated. So he's fully aware. But I do like how you mentioned Walter Taylor. Walter is a guy that we haven't seen a lot from, quite frankly. I mean, this is his first game action, substantial game action, right? And so for him to be thrown out there, I mean, you got to grade with a curve, right? And so all things considered, I thought he ran the ball well. He didn't throw well. He's not really a throwing quarterback.
Except he showed you the talent on the junior trail throw. It's in there somewhere.
Exactly, and I think they know that, and they like Walter, but it's going to take some time.
There's a reason he was the third string, though.
Exactly. And then Newberry, a lot of the younger guys. Martell Hyde, I thought, struggled a little bit. You saw more of Longwell. Langston Patterson was all over the field tonight, by the way. I mean, player of the game in a 33-7 loss. It's hard to find. He had a forced fumble. He had an interception. So big night for Langston. We do have a question here from William Putnam. I think it's a good one. Is there a chance that we have seen our last of Will Shepherd? He's unhappy that he's not getting the ball. His family is vocal on social media. I would agree with that. I mean, we've seen his dad on social media. We've seen a lot of things rolling around. And Will Shepherd, quite frankly, hasn't played a bunch. I mean, he was on the sideline at certain times tonight and in some big spots, right? Big third downs, which is kind of weird. And it's interesting with Shepherd. He's their best player. I mean, either him or CJ Taylor. Right? I think Shepherd, Matt Hable, I think Shepherd's going to get drafted. Right now, maybe his stock has dropped. Maybe he doesn't end up getting drafted. I think he's the player that has the best chance of getting drafted. I think you've probably seen the last of Will Shepherd in a Vanderbilt uniform.
Really?
Yeah. Not of course tonight, but
okay.
after this season.
After this season, yeah, I think he'd be stupid not to finish the year out. Everybody's frustrated.
Yeah.
That would tank his draft stock even more than I guess has happened. I wanted to bring up a comment. Clark Lee said that he went to Walter Taylor just to provide a spark. I think it's a fine move. I mean, they needed a spark badly. I think they would have got ran off the field if Walter Taylor didn't go on there. They controlled the time possession a little bit more with him on the field and scored.
The point that Jordan Rogers made, Seals had gone back in there and completed a 13-yard pass. And Jordan Rogers went back on there and said he was confused that Seals was in there. And he said, he gives them the best chance to win this game. Let's face it, they don't have a quarterback on this roster with this offensive line. Joey, does any quarterback on the planet give this team a chance to win? I mean, Aaron Rodgers, Tom Brady. I mean, that's just where they're at. They've got good receivers. But when your offensive line and the play calling is as poor as it is, there's not many quarterbacks that can save you. So I wanted to throw that out there.
How freaking frustrating is their messaging? So first it's, AJ's the guy. Once AJ struggles a little bit, then it's, we'll see AJ's hurt. He's banged up. And obviously he's banged up. He's not dressed tonight. But they're saying like 2 weeks ago, he's close to a return. And somehow he's not dressed tonight. I wonder if he had a setback or something. But then they move into saying Ken's our guy. Ken's going to start. We're going to move forward with him. Walter Taylor comes in that game on like the third drive.
Yeah.
Billy, what in the world?
Seals was hurt.
Seals was hurt a little bit.
Yeah, Seals
but
got hurt. But
then he stayed in the game.
Yes, you're right. Yeah,
So,
your point stands.
Like,
yeah.
what do you do here? Like, how is the messaging in the direction and the plan at quarterback? I'm sure it's better internally than it's been externally, and he obviously doesn't want to say all that, so I'm going to give him a little bit of grace there. But, man, we have no idea who's going to be the quarterback. Did you think Walter Taylor was going to be the third quarterback today? Did you think A.J. Swan was going to be dressed?
No, you don't know. There's so many mysteries with this program right now. And coming into the season, Joey, I knew this was like a less than likely scenario where we're at this point in the season and we're talking like this. But at this point, there's so like it's not just the quarterback situation. Like, defensively, I mean, this team cannot stop the run to save their life, right? And I know Ole Miss has a great running game. So does Missouri. So does Kentucky. But, I mean, UNLV had success. Hawaii, game one, had success on the ground. Alabama A&M at times. I mean, like, it's not just the quarterback situation. But that's obviously the most important position on the field. That's what we're going to talk about. So, I don't know, Joey. It's tough right now. Let's see. And I thought, Clark, I don't know if it was Clark or Barton or somebody, might have been Andrew Allegretto on a pregame show a couple of weeks ago, but someone in that program said this is tough for everybody, right? It's tough for the people that cover the team because you really don't know what to say. It's tough for the players. I mean, that's who it's probably toughest on. I mean, Clark Lee, of course, and the staff, it's tough, but the fans, everyone, there's not a single person associated with this program it's not tough on. So that compounds it, right? If this team was 4-5, still on the verge of, okay, you pick off, maybe Carolina, Auburn, you still got a shot, but the UNLV game, Joey, I just think I point to that as being a huge downturn point in this season, right? I mean, players are smart enough to mentally sort of realize we just lost UNLV in Vegas, and all of a sudden it felt like things snowballed, right? But even before that, Wake Forest. So maybe that was the point. I don't know. Maybe it was Hawaii, right? But I just think I go back to UNLV, and I think that was a huge turning point. But again, the issues are so much bigger than that. Just that UNLV game right now for this team. Let's see here.
Blake Phillips is right, by the way. I failed to mention that Swan did get hit in the elbow.
Yes. Yeah, and Swan re-aggravated. Yeah. So, and Clark said that. But again, you really never fully know the whole story within that locker room and that staff, as much as, Clark does say publicly.
I do think he's been pretty transparent with us, but this quarterback thing, and that's far from the biggest issue here. I'm kind of picking out one thing to nitpick. Like, I mean, they haven't stopped the run. They haven't stopped the pass. Doesn't matter who the quarterback is. 33 points isn't near the worst week that they've had, and that's a problem.
Yeah, it's a problem. Joe Shutt, does Clark have the guts to make the coaching moves needed during the offseason? What do you think, Joey?
It's hard for me to say. I think that will determine a lot, though. I think that determines a lot of what happens next year, whether they have any sort of spark next year. Because I think if they just run this back, it's the definition of insanity. They're going to get good players in the high school class, but they got good players in the high school class this year. You don't want to rely on them. We'll see what they can do in the portal. I think maybe having some new coordinators and some new voices in there would help them, but I'm not one to speak on what he's going to do. I'm sure he's got that made up in his mind, or at least thinking about it in the back of his head right now, though.
Yeah, I mean, there's going to be changes, right? I mean, I think it's fairly obvious. And Clark has even pointed at it, right, in pressers, and we've talked about that, right? You mentioned a few weeks ago wanting to get Jaden McGowan more involved. There's a couple other hints in there. Don't have specifically, and I want to clip them at some point. But I mean, he's hinted at some coaching scheme decision type stuff, which I think points to some changes after the season, as I think we all know. Justin Holland asks, "Why are we so terrible?"
No complimentary football.
But
it
honestly,
seems
like look at it honestly. Why is Vanderbilt so bad?
I mean, there's a lot of issues. Chris talks about the NIL a lot. I mean, the portal stuff is really difficult, especially at this program. I think looking at this roster, it just feels like they don't play off of each other really well, and you have to do that at Vanderbilt. The secondary and the pass rush don't complement each other. when the passing game's going, the running game's not. The running game has really struggled, and that's hindered the offense. When the offense doesn't score points, it puts the defense in a bad spot. When you can't run the ball, the defense has to be on the field forever. And when you can't get pass rush and your secondary play isn't awesome, it's really difficult there. I think we all know the issues. We've been saying them for a long time, but there's just a lot. Whether you want to look big picture or whether you want to look small picture and just look at the roster is up to you. I mean, there's players that can make plays here. CJ Taylor's a good player. Lennon Humphrey's a good player. But it's really hard to win when your offense is getting such limited opportunities. And when they get those opportunities, they can't run the ball and they can't complement. When they run it well, like they ran tonight, they can't complement it with the pass game. Complementary football, people hate hearing it, but I mean, this team doesn't do that very well. And they don't do a whole lot of things super well consistently. And that's the thing, consistency as well. Because you see them, the first 2 drives of the Georgia game were fantastic. Couldn't build off of it, though. And I think that's a talent thing. It's a line of scrimmage thing. It's a run game thing. A lot of things go into it.
Yeah, there's a lot. Joey, I look at 2 words, depth and inexperience, right? And again, that's so football cliche. We don't have enough depth, right? We're young, but depth is a huge word in the SEC. You get into SEC play, right? But their depth showed, I think, in Vegas, right? I mean, every game they've had guys banged up and guys out. But it just feels like their margin for error coming into the season injury-wise was so small. Everybody's is, but most other SEC teams have the depth behind them. If a guy goes down, they like that second guy too, right? For Vanderbilt, CJ Taylor's been banged up. I mean, I think every player's been banged up at some point this year, but it's hard at Vanderbilt in year 3 when you don't have that depth. You don't have enough. And yeah, so to answer the question, why is this team so bad? I would point to obviously a lot of things, but inexperience at key positions. Martell Height, corner. Tyson Russell's not really inexperienced. Brian Longwell, linebackers, he's had to play a lot. Swan is a sophomore at quarterback a lot of this season. Walter Taylor tonight at quarterback. I mean, just like throwing young kids out there into the fire, and saying, hey, go win an SEC game. Much less beating Wake or UNLV, right? So it's not just SEC games.
Yeah. Notre Dame beat writers have kind of run with this gap closer thing when referring to them versus, say, Ohio State, Georgia. I think Vanderbilt has a gap closing problem. And a lot of people write it off to inexperience, and that's certainly a factor. But the gap between Vanderbilt seniors and Ole Miss's seniors, huge. Vanderbilt senior, why are they having to play so many young players? Because their seniors haven't been good enough. The player development there hasn't been good enough, and the initial talent level probably wasn't where it needed to be either. The ceiling's probably only so high with those guys. So I think there's a lot to unpack there, but I think there's a huge talent discrepancy between them and a lot of the SEC and the SEC teams they need to beat. Maybe not as much Mississippi State or those teams that aren't playing well, maybe Arkansas, I don't know, but Billy, there's a lot to unpack here. I think it starts with the talent discrepancy and the talent gap, and I don't know how you fix that, though. There's good players on this roster, don't get me wrong. They're all really good guys from the looks of it, but there's a talent discrepancy.
Clay Phillips, great guy, one of the biggest fans here. He says Clark has created a mess with this seniority BS. Play the young guys now. I might disagree with that on some notes, right? I mean, I think at the cornerback position specifically, they ended up, they started the season with Russell and Anderson when a lot of people were clamoring for Berry and Height. And I get that, right? But at this point, I mean, Martell Height has started the last several games. Trudell Berry has made a couple of starts, if I'm not mistaken. I think Tyson Russell started tonight, but Berry has played a lot. Anderson's been out. So, I don't even know if it's seniority. I just think Clark as a head coach is looking at guys out there saying, who's the best option at this point? Like, I don't know that there's a ton of seniority going on. I'm sure there's a little bit, like every team has that, right? The older guys are going to get the first nod. Like if it's close, but like Langston Patterson has played a ton. Ethan Barr's been out there, and I know he's struggled, and there's been some complaints about him specifically. But I don't know that there's a ton of seniority going on. I don't know if you would agree.
I think it's just a position by position thing, and I don't think there's an easy fix. I think there's a lot of backup quarterback syndrome. Not just I'm not trying to call out Clay. I think there's just a lot of this got to be better. Trudeau Berry was that early in the season. Trudeau Berry's been fine, but hasn't fixed their problems on defense. Darren Nagu early in the season was supposed to be the guy who saved their pass rush. Didn't happen.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of variability in the roster, but not quite enough variability to be able to write it off as one thing. I think there's a point to what Clay said, but I think there's a lot of position to position things, and I think all their options probably aren't at the levels Ole Miss's are. And that's kind of my takeaway from tonight, and how they got punched in the face and how they just looked flat-footed all night. And even if they came out with energy, still would have been a really tough game for them to win.
Justin Holland asks, how destroyed is the quarterback room now? And that's a great question. I asked myself that specifically tonight, not necessarily when Seals got hurt and Taylor had to go in, but when Taylor, did he get his helmet knocked off? Okay, he got his helmet knocked off. Taylor had to run back to the sideline. And, I mean, you have to put Seals in, right? I mean, so at that point, he's healthy. So at that point, whether he's 100% or not, he was able to physically go out there and play. I guess he healed. Something happened at halftime where Seals had been ready to go, stretched out, whatever. And then they sent Taylor right back out there after that completion from Seals. It was a good completion. It was about a 15-yard, 10, 15-yard catch to Cam Johnson. And the camera pans over to Seals. Great timing, SEC Network. And they actually, out of the break, they slow-mo. They turned it into a slow motion little clip of Seals just nodding his head. And that you could clip that Ken Seals nodding his head slowly and just in frustration as a defining clip. Like that's Vanderbilt's season. Your veteran quarterback who's been through it with Derrick Mason, and he feels like he's being mistreated. At least that's what it looked like. It looked like he was terribly frustrated. And I don't blame him. But at the same time, if you're Vanderbilt, Walter Taylor is running the ball well. They got something going. And Seals threw that interception, and it's just hard. I get going on these tangents, and I don't know how to end them about it. Like that's what this season has done. But the point stands about Seals and the quarterback room. I don't know that it's destroyed, but it's not in the best spot. It's not in a good spot because number one, you got Swan and Joey. You talked about the messaging. I mean, you got three guys right now. Is Swan healthy? What percent is Swan at right now? That's the number one question. I mean, I would love to know that. Seals, what percent is he at? Is he 100% right now? I mean, how banged up is he? Why didn't he play in the second half? Walter Taylor, why didn't we see more? I think the question for Walter Taylor, why didn't we see more of his running packages? Maybe planned with A.J. Swan to start the season. So, again, destroyed may not be the word. It's pretty dang close, though.
That's a great point about Seals. There's so many different directions I could take this, but it kind of just boils down to it being a really hard place to play quarterback, especially this season. Last season, maybe not as much. They don't have a great run game. Actually, that's putting it lightly. Their offensive line has really given them some trouble.
Ironic tonight, they had their biggest rushing day.
Yeah, it was from a quarterback who had barely checked into a game and a running back who had barely checked into a game, and neither of them had over 60 yards. So that kind of tells you what you need to know about their running game. With a quarterback like Ken Seals and even A.J. Swan, a young guy, you got to be able to complement what they do with the run game, and you got to be able to protect them. Vanderbilt hasn't been able to do that a whole lot. Look at Walter Taylor. He won the game and got folded in half at one point. He got sacked, 3 or 4 times? And that's one of them was a slip screen. I don't know if that's the offensive line's fault. One of them, I think he held on to the ball too long. Maybe one or two of them he held on to the ball too long. But I just think it's such a hard place to play quarterback. And you mentioned it earlier. Who's going to win? I think Aaron Rodgers probably won him a game. Seeing what he's done to the Bears for my whole childhood, he's probably going to find a way to beat the Bears with this roster somehow. But I think it's just such a difficult place to play quarterback. They don't have a safety blanket tight end. I think Justin Ball does some good things. Cam Johnson's really emerged. I'm excited about his future. But without Cole Spence, without them utilizing the tight end like some other teams utilize the tight end, I think that's difficult. Without the run game, Without receivers consistently winning one-on-ones, they have talent there. Guys haven't won one-on-ones throughout the full season, though, and that's really tough as a quarterback, especially against SEC corners and SEC defensive lines. Billy, I don't have the answer here. It's just a tough place to play quarterback, and I think you look at trying to get gap closers. Jeremy St. Hilaire maybe is one, but if you can't put him in a great spot to succeed, if you can't put Whit Muschamp, another guy who people are excited about, in a position to succeed, what do you have? Not sure.
Yeah, it feels like transfer portal might be an option for this team at the quarterback position. So because there's going to be movement with this team in the offseason. I mean, there's going to be, right? That's another challenge. That's another layer of this season. We're getting some good comments here, Joey. We've got a lot. We're going to try to get to every single comment and question. And again, we appreciate you guys checking in with us. Vent it out, Vanderbilt fans. We want you guys to try to come here and get some answers, because we're trying to figure out some of the answers to your questions as well. Next sponsor, though, Reed, Murfreesboro Pure Milk Company. They are a family-owned third-generation milk and ice cream distribution company located in Murfreesboro. That partnership began over 50 years ago with Purity Dairy in Nashville to provide purity milk and ice cream to consumers in Middle Tennessee, and they now serve Southern Kentucky, Northern Alabama, Chattanooga, and North Georgia. Today, they supply grocery stores, convenience stores, and others with Purity products, as well as Mayfield, Nestle, and Haagen-Dazs ice cream. For more info, visit their website at npmci.com. I think Chris Lee might be getting him some ice cream tonight. We do. I think it's like 40 days, 40 nights, like starved in the desert right now. We've just been going at it. But no, we need food before ice cream, if anything. Joey's getting his Gatorade bar out here. But no, big thanks to Murfreesboro Pure Milk Company. Few great ice cream brands out there. So if you're feeling a little low, Vanderbilt fans, just go grab you some Mayfield, Nestle, or Haagen-Dazs ice cream. You're supporting the Murfreesboro Pure Milk Company. All right, let's get back to the questions and comments, Joey. Let's see what we got. William Putnam, an interesting comment, not involved anything in this game. Not to rub it in too much, but Lance Leopold, Kansas head coach, wanted the Vandy job. So did Jamie Chadwell, the Liberty coach, right now. Joey, Lance Leopold has done a heck of a job at Kansas, and it's tough. He's not in the SEC. The Big 12 is a pretty dang good conference, though, right now, and he's done a heck of a job. It's easy for Vanderbilt fans to look over and say, man, Leopold has done a pretty good job there.
Yeah, it's interesting to see if they have to move on from Clark at some point. Are there enough guys who are actually interested in the job? It's such a tough job, and if they move on from Clark after this year or next year, people are going to look at it and be like, he looked on paper like the perfect guy for the job, and he didn't get it done. So I don't think we're at that point yet. I think he's still got time to go, but it concerns me to think who in the world could take this program and flip it on its head if it's not Clark Lee. I mean, Clark Lee says all the right things. He's a Vanderbilt guy. I guess you overcorrect maybe and try to do something crazy with your hire, but it's such a tough job. And I guess other guys could have done a better job, and they could be doing better. They could be doing better things, but man, it's really, really difficult job. And that's what scares me the most, more so than any micro issue in terms of each game. It's a tough job. And that scares me long term for Vanderbilt football.
Yeah, I mean, I think right now you're at a I don't know, breaking point, turning point. Maybe not yet, but at the off season, this is the biggest off season I think in the history of any Vanderbilt football tenure, right? Because if you're Clark Lee, you're going to have to sit down with your staff and make some tough decisions, right? Whether it's with guys leaving, whether you have plans for players or other coaches coming in. But this is an off season. It's going to have a ton of movement, right? Whether it's good or bad. And in the transfer portal era, Joey, you're going to see that at every school. Maybe not coaches as much, but a ton of player movement. But yeah, Lance Leopold did want the Vanderbilt job. He wanted it. I think he was close to taking it, but Vanderbilt hired Clark Lee, and I mean, last year, at this point last year, we were talking about a win over Kentucky. Right. So let's not forget about that now. Right. And again, I know it's hard to think about that right now, but you can't forget about what happened last year. So I want to point that out too. We'll have all offseason to talk about the future of this program. Matthew Moser from Aria Gerson, because I think she's already tweeted and Clark has already commented after the game. Clark Lee said he went to Walter Taylor just to provide a spark. So, I mean,
that's where I got it from too. I didn't look up.
Okay. Understandable. So Joey already mentioned that. Let's see here. Joe Shutt. Will Shepard has checked out. Get rid of him. Clay Phillips. Swan got hit on the elbow again in practice. You already got to that. Why was Quincy Skinner out? It's a good question. I saw it from Aria's tweet that, she said he was out. And again, there's another layer of the mysteries of it. Like, I don't know. Why was he out? I don't know. I mean, I would guess some sort of injury. I guess it could have been disciplinary, potentially. We don't know. There's just so many things we don't know. That's another layer of it. There's been some mysterious injuries, right? I mean, I'm sure every program has that. But Quincy Skinner, I mean, you would have liked to seen more from him all season, not just tonight.
Yeah, I couldn't find a reason. I think maybe Clark said it post-game, but it wasn't tweeted, so I'm not sure. We weren't there. We were at the baseball scrimmage and working on basketball secret scrimmage stuff. Working on basketball secret scrimmage stuff. We would have loved to have been there, but it didn't make sense for us today, and because we kind of knew this would happen. And I think the expectations for this team are about fair right now. They were what were they, a 26-point underdog? And
25
I didn't expect them to cover that, and I don't think they've lived up to an expectation in any singular game except for Georgia this year, and that kind of tells you where you're at. I don't know how I got to that out of Quincy Skinner, but there's a lot of issues with this team relative to expectation. By smart people in Vegas, they have failed every game except Georgia. And when they beat Georgia, or when you would have thought that they beat Georgia. You would have thought they beat Georgia when all this happened.
Yeah.
And that's kind of where we're at. They cover a spread and there's a parade. And maybe we were a little guilty of that. But I mean, I think we kept it.
How could you not?
But that's where we're at right now. You got to throw a parade for keeping it under 20 against Georgia. That's where we're at.
Yeah, I mean, look at today. It's a good example. Georgia dominated Florida. So I think it was real last week. Yeah, maybe Georgia slept walk playing in a construction site, but
that's not who Vanderbilt is.
No, it's not, but I don't think we were wrong to sit there and say, hey, look, positivity, right? I mean, it was right in front of our face. Let's see here. Knox too tall. What does that say about Vanderbilt? UNLV broke them. I think it says a lot. I mean, I think it says a lot about where they're at right now. They're not there yet. They're not, quite frankly, close yet. Right? This program is a long way away from competing in the SEC. I think you need, if you're a fan, and you could look at next year's schedule, buckle up, right, for probably another similar season, right? Now, but there's a big caveat. If they can figure out the quarterback position, right, if they could bring in somebody from the portal, whether it's a veteran type of kid, type of guy from the portal, I think that'd be huge. If not, I mean, does Swan stay? Does Seals come back? Does Drew Dickey come back? I mean, who comes back and who leaves, right? There's a lot out there, a lot in the air right now, so there's a lot riding on this off season.
There's so many other issues than quarterback, though. I don't want to understate that. The quarterback position is important, but they don't have a run game. I don't see how they're going to completely transform their run game in a year. They're going to have so many offensive linemen leave, and that's a concern for me, and their offensive line isn't awesome as we speak. They struggle to consistently throw it down the field, even though they have that capability. I mean, the defense is the defense, and it's probably one of the bottom-ranked Power 6 defenses in the country. Quarterback play doesn't completely solve it, even though quarterback play could mask a lot of the things that are wrong. Walter Taylor masked some things that are wrong with the Vanderbilt offense when he was running it down the field tonight. So only so much you can do, though.
Good question from William Putnam. Might be the MVP question asker tonight. Which Vanderbilt offensive player would win a starting position at Ole Miss? I'll give the floor to you, John.
Not many. I don't know the complete answer to this, but me and Chris have talked about this a lot on the way to the press conferences from the press box, in the press box. Maybe DeRicky Wright starts at linebacker. Maybe CJ Taylor starts for them. Hard for me to find an answer otherwise. They have good talent in young defensive linemen that hasn't turned into production. They have corners. Martel Height maybe in a few years becomes that, but I think he's right. Maybe DeRicky Wright. Who else? I don't know. Maybe CJ Taylor. And CJ.
Offensive.
Oh, did he say offense?
The first part was offensive.
My bad. It's
so
long
you got
day.
your defense.
Long day.
You did ask defense. Though.
Okay. Maybe Will Shepherd, maybe Lon Humphreys in a year or two.
Yeah. I agree. I mean,
listen, the NIL in the offseason, the three guys that the Anchor Collective at the time, now it's called Anchor Impact. At the time, the Anchor Impact Fund had signed three guys. I think they signed a few others, kind of, added on, but it was AJ Swan, Will Shepherd, and CJ Taylor. And at the time, it was pretty impressive you were able to keep all three, right? I mean, you had some other schools, as it happens every program, trying to poach those guys off the team, right? And so to keep those guys, it was pretty impressive, right? Hasn't been enough this year, right? You need more of those guys. 3 or 4 more CJ Taylors would be nice for this team.
Then you'd have like a SEC defense.
Yeah, and that's CJ Taylor would start on most defenses, I think. Maybe
Ole Miss's situation at that position.
Yeah, maybe not Georgia. He would compete. I'll say that. And then Shepherd. Yeah, I agree with you and all the 4 players you said. Hayball, I think.
Oh yeah.
Hayball's one of the best punters in the country. And Williams said his answer was the only answer is CJ on defense. That's it. Derrick, maybe. So he says Derrick Wright, maybe. Let's see here. Justin Holland, how is this team so undisciplined? That's a good question.
I mean, you hate to make excuses for the coaching staff here. It's really, really reflective of coaching, I think. And I don't know which coach exactly that falls on. I'll have to look in the stats and see exactly where the undisciplined issues were, where the penalties were, where guys looked like they were coming out flat-footed. But it's coaching in some aspect. Some of it's on the players. You got to bring your own energy and be disciplined and do the little things well, but coaching at the end of the day. And if you're saying these guys aren't wired to do it, then why don't you get guys who are wired to do it? It's kind of where it falls for me is coaching.
Let's see here. Clark Lee, this is from Alan Huang. Clark Lee did not look like the perfect candidate on paper. No head coach experience. What do you think?
I mean, I wasn't around for the search, but it's hard for me to imagine a guy who could. I mean, certainly that's a thing, and he's correct. I mean, you have to have head coaching experience, especially coming into a job like this. And maybe if they have a search again, they'll be more cognizant of that. But I think he was probably who I would have hired at that point. And maybe I sound stupid for saying that. I probably do. It's really late at night, and I haven't had time to think about this. It's kind of a rapid reaction for a reason, but I'll have more for you on that. I'll look more into that, but there's some good candidates who have done better things elsewhere than Clark has done here. And that's what it boils down to. Ultimately, it doesn't matter what it looked like 2 years ago. It matters what it looks like now. And Kansas has done some awesome things. Liberty has done some really good things as well. So Vanderbilt hasn't. Yeah.
And it's easy to look at that and compare, but I've talked enough about Clark and why he's the right fit at Vanderbilt. Luke Wyatt has. I mean, I don't think I need to rehash that. Sebastian Bronner. He's been a great commenter all season.
Chris and I met him. Great guy.
Yeah. He's been there since the Hawaii game. He says, I'm a Clark Lee believer, but we must face the facts. The lack of preparation and execution is evident week in and week out. Staff changes must be made in order to have future belief in this program. Agreed.
Yes, agreed. Correct.
We have hinted at that. Not just hinted, we've talked about that. And Sebastian, great comment. I completely agree with you. Joe Shutt says, why are we talking about last year? Why? Joe, come on. I mean, if Vanderbilt went 2-10 year one of Clark Lee, then they go 5-7 in year 2 with Mike Wright and Ray Davis as the guys really leading the charge, right? You still had the same defense. I mean, somehow it looks like they're playing worse this year because last year they were able to get 2 wins when in reality, Mike Wright and Ray Davis controlled those games and their offensive line somehow looked better. Oh no, you got 2 leaders as running backs back there and they won you those games. I mean, let's face the facts here. I'm talking about that, Joe, because if they would have gone 2-10 last year, I mean, Coach Lee would be on the hot seat right now. Right? That's how important last year was to show some tangible progress, to show that things are looking good, right? And their future is bright. It can be bright. That 5-7 season last year got you guys like Sherrill and Humphreys. And I mean, you go 2-10 last year, back-to-back 2-10 seasons. What does that say to recruits? But that was proof of concept last year. So that's why it's so important last year. I don't know if you're with me there, Joey, but I think it was huge to go 5-7. Now, you lost a ton, all of that momentum after this season, right? So you can argue it's unimportant now, but it is because of that's the glimmer of hope right now, right? That 5-7 season last year is the glimmer of hope, and also the recruiting. The recruiting class looks good coming up.
Yeah, I think it certainly gives you some things to look back on if you're really trying to find a reason to believe in Clarkley. Also, it gives you some reasons to say, how the heck is this not improved? Because you had the momentum, you had the sell to recruits, like you mentioned, and they haven't taken a step forward. They've taken a huge step back from the looks of it. Even if they get to 3 wins, it's still a huge step back. And the way they're losing games, the way they're emphatically losing games, I think there's a reason to talk about last year. It's not only to say they're incredible last year and there's reason to believe. There's also reason to say, how the heck did you not improve?
We're at the point where fans are kind of all right. We're checking out. We've had our time on here, and we appreciate it, guys. We really enjoy doing this when you guys are a part of this, and it makes us want to do more lives. Just
Yeah, I mean, I like talking about football and basketball and baseball.
No,
It
you
just-
don't.
it's-
You like talking about basketball.
Stop. I sat at the baseball scrimmage for 18 hours today, Billy. Maybe not 18 hours, but 18 innings. I'm losing my mind. Just don't make fun of my muscles. That's it. Make fun of my football knowledge all you want, but no muscle talk.
Yeah, let's see you run a slant route. But no, in all seriousness, we appreciate you guys coming to hang out with us. Got to get to a couple more sponsors here. John Leffen and the Mater Nexon Government Contracts Group. They advise government contractors on all aspects of their businesses with a proud focus on matching legal solutions to business needs. Give them a call, 256-551-0171. But we're not done yet, Joey. We're gonna we're gonna, as long as we're getting comments and questions, we're gonna keep rolling. Let's see here. Justin Holland says, "Welcome to Vanderbilt football, Joey." I think you've been welcomed and doctored in well enough. You probably expected some of this, but
I expected this one more than anybody.
Maybe
there was a glimmer of optimism in everyone's eye. Mine was like, it's like a dark soul. I'm already at that level. I'm at Chris Lee's veteran level.
Man, that's early. Let's
it's
see.
Really early for me to be there. maybe. You know what I heard the first week that I was covering Vanderbilt football is Rock Bottom has a basement. So we'll see.
Oh man, Trevor Houlihan, our boy Trevor, always said no, he's not. But he always says you can't break what's already broken. So that's kind of where Vanderbilt fans are at right now. Joe says, "I feel for you guys. You have to come on post game and make excuses for this." Yeah.
I like to make excuses, but sometimes it comes off that way. And
yeah,
I mean,
listen. We're not going to come on here and just berate this program, right? As hard as it is right now, right? We have to tell it like it is. So at this point, it's hard not to, technically, but we also want to talk detailed, right? We're not just going to. This team is awful. Good night, everybody. Right? I mean, we're looking for answers just like everybody else, right? So we want to try to be detailed in our answers to an extent.
Yeah, I mean, I think we both try to walk the fine line of objectivity without getting personal or whatever. I think the thing that you said a few weeks ago that stuck with me is like, if you try to sell hope to this fan base at this point in the season when they're this down in the dumps and they lose like this, you sound like an idiot. And I think we try to balance it at times, but it's really difficult at times to be able to say, well, this good thing happened today when they lost to Ole Miss by 26 points and got punched in the face and didn't respond until the third quarter. I mean, that's kind of the line we walk, and it's difficult at this point in the season, but it's a blessing to have these opportunities and to have these platforms. So we got to keep that in mind as well. And I think me and you both are pretty cognizant of that as well.
Yeah. Braden McPherson, good friend Braden. 2 weeks of preparation to start the game like that is absolutely inexcusable. I agree 100% with that. And that's why I said this team was unprepared. I mean, 2 weeks, right? Off the bye. We always say off the bye, this team should have a few plays lined up early in the game that surprise everybody. And maybe they did and they just didn't work, right? Maybe they didn't execute, right? But at some point as a staff, you've got to try something different. And maybe they did, but it didn't look like they did. So that's where, that's what we're pointing to. Speaks to the job of the coaching, the staff, or speaks to the job of the coaching staff this far. Massive staff overhaul has to be in place this offseason. I think we have hinted at that. Agree with that. Sebastian back at it. Billy, Joey, how do you think Candace and the Chancellor are viewing the current situation with the football program? It's a good question because Chancellor Deermeyer is a huge sports fan, right? Massive sports guy. If you took every chancellor in the country at every Power 5 school, he's probably up there in terms of sports fans and sports guys, right? Especially at a school like Vanderbilt. And if you narrowed it down to just the academic institutions, he might be number one, right? But that doesn't take away from the institutional blocks that have maybe blocked him, right? Whether it's the board or whatever, right? There's more people than just him that convene on decisions, right? With athletics and everything else. But I mean, come on. I'm not calling this question stupid, but they feel awful. I mean, I'll tell you up front, like Deermeyer, he came up. I thought Chris made a good point. He came up, and speaking honestly here, what game was it? Kentucky or Kentucky?
They were down big at halftime.
Yeah, Kentucky was all over Vandy at the half, and that Kentucky game was kind of the last chance, I think, for this team. I think a lot of fans were pointing to that game. Ray Davis coming back. Maybe Vanderbilt shows some life. Maybe they get off the mat, and maybe they pull off a win here, or at least compete and show some progress this year. They didn't do that. They played awful, and at half, Chancellor Deermeyer came up to us and they posted the picture. You were in there. But I thought that was a gesture of, okay, we understand that the product on the field right now is not very good. But, we want to pay respects to the people here covering this team, right? I don't know if they shook the hands of the road team of Kentucky's beat guys. I think they did. But Deermeyer and one of their social media guys. And I thought that was kind of and Chris said this, right? And I agreed with Chris. How it's kind of them acknowledging where they're at, right? And kind of doing something nice. So, but I'm not going to beat around the bush. They feel awful. Candace, and they're probably concerned, right? And I said this a couple of weeks ago. They're going to sit Clark down and basically say, look, right, what's the plan here? We need a clear plan of attack. I'm not saying they're going to say, like Jimbo Fisher, for example, you need to bring in an offensive coordinator, right? Maybe they do that, maybe they don't, but they're going to sit him down and say, listen, give us your plan. Give us what you think is going to work and move this program forward, right? That's going to happen. And that shows me that they're viewing it horribly. I mean, I don't think there's any other way to put that, Joey. They obviously believe in him, Sebastian says. I agree with that. That's why they hired the guy. I mean, if you don't believe in Clark Lee, and right now, there's great reason to, right? But this is a rapid reaction, and tomorrow morning, fans might wake up and feel a little bit different, right? That's how it usually happens. But if you don't have faith in Clark Lee, you are short-sighted.
Results, Billy.
I get it, but say they fire Clark Lee. Who are they gonna bring in? They're gonna bring in Lance Leopold? No. He just took a huge contract. I don't know that there's anybody else that can fix what's ailing this program right now. And that's one man's opinion. And he knew it was going to be hard, right? Everybody did. Right? But at the same time, I see why people might disagree with me. And I'll take on the flack. I will. But at the end of the day, this program needs a coach that can change the mentality and mindset that a lot of these players are still Derrick Mason type guys. So they don't think the way Clark might think, or they have not been molded by Clark, right? So I'm just throwing that out there. So yes, they do believe in Clark, but they will push him to make some changes. I think so, to answer Sebastian's question.
Yeah. The only thing I want to push back on is, like, I think there's reason to not believe in Clark Lee. And I think you said the same thing.
Yeah.
But, I mean, the results are the results. If you take a step back in year 3 in any situation, beg some questions, and I think we certainly have those, and we've been saying those for an hour. So I didn't want what you said to get misconstrued, because I think there's certainly some validity to not believing in Clark Lee at this point. And I'm still on the fence a little bit. I know I'm going to give the politically correct answer and say there's some good things with him. I like the philosophy and all that, but also results are results. And there's a lot of things that are starting to get a little tired. And I think we're at that point.
Yeah. No, I mean, listen, I totally get. That's why I think this offseason is massive. Changes have to be made. I think they will be made, and they've got to be made pretty quickly. I think, right? Or else you get too far behind in the SEC. It gets ugly, right? And it has this year. I mean, we've seen it. Sebastian makes a point, and he says, coaches like Leopold at Kansas, Chadwell at Liberty, and Mike Elko at Duke are elevating talent at a fast rate. Their overall staffs are scheming, preparing well, and are tactically sound. How do we get there? Again, I like your point about Leipold, Chadwell, and Elko. But, let's look at the schools they're at. Elko's at Duke in the SEC. Or ACC. I don't know why I said. Clark Lee's at Vanderbilt in the SEC, right? Mike Elko's at Duke in the ACC. The ACC is arguably the worst Power 5 conference, right? I mean, I think most people would agree with me there. You're playing Syracuse, Pittsburgh, Virginia Tech, Virginia week in, week out. Clemson's down this year. So that has helped Elko. Not taking anything away from Elko. Clark Lee knows Elko well. He respects him. I do. He's done a phenomenal job there. Chadwell's at Liberty. I mean, it's a great example. And Chadwell, I think, wanted the Vanderbilt job as well. I don't think they were ever going to hire Chadwell. I don't think that was a fit. He's done well at Liberty, but it's Liberty. It's not Vanderbilt in the SEC. Leipold is a lot better example. I think Leipold is the example to say, listen, look at what they've done in the portal, right? Look at what they found a quarterback in Jalen Daniels. Oh, and they also found a backup, Bean, who just went out and beat Oklahoma today, right? And they've invested. Look at their, Kansas has done a good job. How do we get there? That's the old $1 million question there, Sebastian. I don't know. I don't know, because, and Chris has talked about this 1,000 times. Vanderbilt's NIL program is at the bottom of the SEC. It might be bottom half it definitely is bottom half of Power 5. Might be bottom 5, bottom 10. But in the SEC, it's at the bottom. So you're not going to outbid, right? I mean, you're not going to outbid Georgia, LSU, Alabama, Ole Miss. You're not. So you're not going to get there with NIL money. All right, let's go to the portal, right? Transfer portal. What's the number one tactic to bring guys to your program in the portal? NIL. So you already have that taken away. It has to be developing talent through high school recruits. It has to be. That's the only thing that I think is possible.
Yeah, and you have to get gap closers who are high school recruits. You have to get like Whit Edwards type guys. You have to get Marcel Heights, Dante Carters consistently.
They're coming. They're going to play.
They're going to have to play early. I don't know what other option Vanderbilt has. Also with the transfer thing too, not to make excuses for them, I think it's really hard. I think they have a much smaller pool to evaluate guys out of than other teams just because of grades, and that whole thing shouldn't be lost. But got to do a better job. You got to have better evals, and you got to have guys who come in. If you're going to get a transfer, got to come in and make a difference. And guys have made differences. Some guys haven't, though. And I think there's a lot to be desired in terms of their transfer portal. You have such little room for mis-evals in recruiting, and I think they've had a decent amount of those, whether some of those were Derrick Mason's guys, sure, Clark Lee's guys. Particularly, I look at the sophomore corners who haven't given them a whole lot of minutes. Gumbo Gaskin's done some good things, but not a whole lot of guys have got on the field, and that's kind of where I look is you can't afford any missed evals, and they've had some, and that's certainly hurt them.
And you're in the midst of a 2-10 season. At least, I mean, they could get one more win here, maybe two. And that, I think, and don't forget that you still got Auburn and South Carolina. Like I don't want to forget that. It doesn't feel like Vanderbilt can beat those two teams, quite frankly, right now. I think South Carolina more so than Auburn, but that is in Columbia, one of the harder places to play. So we'll see. I don't want to forget that. But in the midst of an awful season, you have to sell. So again, another thing we can't forget, Vanderbilt got Whit Edwards, Dante Carter, Alvin Williamson, studs from the state of Texas. I think Edwards from Oklahoma. But they pulled off those guys, right? And again, they haven't gotten on the field yet. They haven't done anything yet. But to even get recruiting wins like that at this point, I think is another glimmer of hope, right? So it's something. Let's see. We got a few more here, Joey. We're going on an hour, man. I think we said, 30 minutes is what we were shooting for. But no, again, thank you guys for checking out the show today. Sutherland and Belk will bring us down the home stretch here. They are a family-owned injury law firm. If you or a loved one has been hurt or in an accident, give Taylor or Russell a call, 615-846-6200 to see what your rights are and if they can help. Well, we're trying to help you guys right now, just like Sutherland and Belk will do if you're ever hurt or in an accident. Let's see here, guys. William Putnam, last question. Have some fun. Which two Vanderbilt basketball players could help this football team? Joe, you want to go first?
First one that comes to mind is Tyron Lawrence. I think he's wiry, athletic. Play some receiver for him a little bit. Maybe Colin Smith could play tight end. 6'8" tight end would be an interesting idea. Lee Dort at fullback. He could really. I mean, Lee Dort I think moves really well for a fullback.
I think
but
Lee Dort more so as like a pulling guard or like a tackle to kind of protect the blind side.
Lee Dort hedged and Lakered a few screens last year. Don't let his I don't know that he can move as well as Van Allen Lubin, but he can move a little bit.
Yeah.
Man, for me, I think Ezra might be a good running back, maybe out of the backfield. He's not very big, so he'd probably have to take some licks. But I think Ezra might be a kind of a weapon you bring in, once or twice. Yeah, with the speed. I want to try to go a little bit different here. Rivera Torres as maybe a receiver on the outside. I think Rivera Torres. I'm trying to think. Who do you have?
JQ Roberts.
Oh, tight end.
Freak out.
Maybe LeBron James tight end.
Presley.
Presley, yeah, maybe a running back. Tyron is an obvious one. I think Colin Smith could be a good guy, but I don't think his Vanderbilt basketball is a super physical team. I think they're okay last year in the physicality department, but I think if you asked us about Tennessee or some of those physical SEC teams, you'd have a lot of options. But I think there's some guys that could help the team. I don't know if anybody. We'll do some research. I'm not saying we're going to write a piece or anything, but maybe on the board we might throw something up and give some answers there. Let's see here. When is the first basketball game? Justin asked. The first basketball game is in 9 days, probably 8 days by now. November 7th at home against Presbyterian, 7 o'clock tip-off, 7 o'clock tip-off. And then they play, is it that next Friday?
USC Upstate.
Against USC Upstate. And then Greensboro is game number 3 that next week. I think, right? Yeah, sandwich in between there. That's going to be if you're looking at if you're looking at out of those first 4 games, a game to actually go to as a Vandy fan, I would say go to Greensboro at home in a few weeks because Vanderbilt. I mean, I think they're going to kill the first 2 teams they play. I would recommend you go see that Greensboro team play against Vanderbilt. Let's see here, Elliot. We have good players, just not enough of them. It's been the same problem for years. And Joey, that's what you're hitting at.
Yeah, they have a couple guys. I mean, it's a great point by Justin Holland. They haven't signed Dante Carter yet. He's a guy who's been on flip watch a little bit over the course of the last few months. They have CJ Taylor. They have Will Shepard. Those are guys who you would think of as ideally, if Dante Carter's as good as CJ Taylor, you're in great shape.
Yeah.
Who else complements him, though? They have guys on defense, but the recruit optimism always tends to get a little blown up. And I think it's a really interesting thing to think about. If you only have one or two huge playmakers on each side of the ball, how do you compete in the SEC? And I think that's a great point.
Yeah. I mean, he's right in saying that's every year, and that's probably going to be the case for the foreseeable future at Vanderbilt. I mean, I don't know if you honestly asked every Vanderbilt head coach who's ever coached a Vanderbilt football team and say, hey, like, do you have enough talent? They'd probably honestly say, well, I mean, yeah, but they would probably always say, but, right? And we could use another guy here, another guy there. So that's always going to be the issue at Vanderbilt. Let's see here. Big Door guys, a good one. Where do y'all think Will Sheppard grades out in terms of NFL draft stock at this point? That's a tough one. I think a couple of weeks ago, I was pretty convinced Will Sheppard would be a 4 to 6, round 4 to 6. Definitely not a day 2 guy. He would definitely be a day 3 guy at this point, right? I'm probably closer to a 5th or 6th round pick right now, just because he hasn't played a ton and he struggled with some drops. So he might even fall out. I'm not a draft analyst. We might do a piece on that and see where Sheppard's draft stock is, talking to maybe an expert, but I don't know. I would say 5 or 6, but definitely day 3 right now.
Yeah, I would say 5 or 6, maybe 4 if everything goes well.
A few more things on tape.
Yeah, maybe. Has a good combine, interviews well, stuff like that. It's hard to know. I'm not an expert either. I don't claim to be. I think
the Florida game was huge. I think for his speed, he got up to 21 miles per hour. I think that was big.
Yeah, I think the tools are certainly there. Whether the production and him playing on a bad team and not being an alpha at times could hurt him a little bit.
Yeah, and I think scouts that go to these games, they watch body language and things like that, so they might have seen that in some of Sheppard today. Or not today, but throughout the season. Let's see here. Philo says, I enjoy listening to Norman Jordan. That's all I got. Norman, I like listening to Norman on the radio too, and Allegretta. Norman does a really good job. He played at Vanderbilt. He is fun to listen to. It's kind of a silver lining here. Justin asks, would Barton Simmons be the only coach that's retained? That's honestly kind of funny. No. I mean, Barton's the guy that has to be retained. I mean, you could argue Barton Simmons in a weird way is the only hope right now.
Why is that?
And I'm not taking anything away from Clark because Clark hired Barton. But Clark and Barton, those two guys, I think are the thread that's holding this program together right now. I really do. And again, not to take away from any other of the coaches. I think they've got good coaches on the staff, right? I think they've also got some coaches that, we may see an exit from. Mm-hmm. We'll see what happens. I just think Clark and Barton, those two guys, almost more importantly, Barton, because he's doing a lot of that recruiting. So is Clark, of course. But strategically, who do we go after? All right, who is our backup here? I think Barton is such a huge piece. Elliot, I was at the UNLV game in 2019. Oh, gosh. I felt like that was the beginning of the end for Derek Mason. That team pretty much killed us this year, too. Yeah, I mean, same stories. I went into that UNLV game saying this could not happen, right? This can't happen. And, Joey, what happened?
It happened.
Vanderbilt lost to UNLV. No, you're good. We're going to wrap it up here soon. Justin says they haven't signed yet. See Pimpton, Kamorian. Yeah, that's a good point about Dante Carter. So, well, that's the last of the comments, I think. As you see at the bottom, Vanderbilt travels to Oxford. We don't have the score up there, but I don't know that it really needs to be up there. Vanderbilt loses to Ole Miss 33-7. Thank you to Joey Dwyer for bringing me over here to Lipscomb and making me a part of his school. Got a great studio in here we were able to do this in. Thank you to everybody that tuned into the Rapid Reaction for Baseball. We got content out all over the place right now on the board, on YouTube, with stories and stuff. Will Owens helped us out with recording that at the Hawk, and then also all you guys for tuning in tonight. So thank you to all the fans. And thank you, Joey.
Need that mic. Check out the Baseball Rapid Reaction. I leaked some basketball secret scrimmage stuff in there, like halfway through. If you guys wanted to see it, if you made it this far, you deserve it. So I appreciate you guys watching. Obviously, not my favorite show to do, but It's a blessing to have the opportunity to do this. I'm sure Billy and I both have thought that way for a while. Even covering games like this, it's a blessing, and I appreciate you guys watching. Having a platform to talk about sports is something I've dreamed of, and you can't take that for granted. And you kind of have to walk the line of saying that and also giving your opinion at times. So we try to do our best. We appreciate you guys watching and tuning in. And turn into the baseball rapid reaction if you're not sick of us yet. I'm a little sick of listening to myself speak today, though. I need to get cookout or something to eat. So, we'll talk to you guys soon. Thank you guys for watching. And again, we couldn't appreciate it more. You guys give us the opportunity to do all these things. And I'm sure the Vanderbilt guys appreciate you guys as well, even if they don't like to hear our opinions or your guys' opinions sometimes.
Amen. For Joey Dwyer, I'm Billy Derrick. Thanks for listening to another edition of the VandySports Podcast.